Hello. Are we just recording this today, or is this Ames Chamber folks will be on this? Oh, we can't hear you.
Jim, they're recording it and then they're going to distribute it to the membership too.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yep. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. And we also have a few people that are on as well.
Okay.
And once everyone gets on, we can go ahead and get started.
We're missing Sean yet.
All right.
Sorry, I knew I had seen the email from you, but I could not find it for the life of me, but.
There's Sean.
All right.
Fast.
And Sean, will you need to share your screen at all?
Yes, please.
All right. I'll make you a co-host.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Is everyone ready to get started?
Everybody's mics, everybody can hear okay?
All right. Thank you all for joining us for the Cyclone Exchange webinar. This is just a little informational session for everyone to get familiar with this. Today, we are welcomed by Jamie Pollard, who's the Director of Athletics at Iowa State, Tim Day, who's the Iowa State faculty representative to the Big 12 and NCAA, and then Sean Kelly, who is with Influencer and is also working on the Cyclone Exchange Program. Now I'm going to pass off to Jamie Pollard, and he'll get it started with the information.
Thank you, Emily. We really appreciate the Chamber hosting today's session. Tim and Sean and myself are going to spend a little time sharing with you how we believe we can partner with the Chamber members to help both our student athletes and our local community take advantage of the NIL opportunities that now exist. About a year ago, the NCAA approved the opportunity for student athletes to be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness. And we've been working during the last year to facilitate and support our student athletes by creating a comprehensive program that emphasized the ability for them to develop their personal brand and to manage that, to help them with social media strategies, and also to have a financial literacy education component with our College of Business. The Cyclone Exchange, which we launched last month with the help of Influencer, is our ability, allows us the ability for our student athletes to connect with local businesses. Hence why we wanted to reach out to all of you and share this opportunity and encourage the Chamber members to register on the Cyclone Exchange. Tim Day, our faculty athletics rep, and Sean Kelly from Influencer are going to now spend a little time talking about what the student athletes are able to do, and then how does the actual Cyclone Exchange program work. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim Day.
Thanks, Jamie. And again, let me also echo Jamie's thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting and kind of engaging with us on this. As Jamie mentioned, it wasn't long ago that the NCAA made it permissible for student athletes to monetize the use of their name, image, and likeness. And you might think, oh no, this is revolutionary. It's a big deal. I tell people sometimes, I don't think Jamie forgets this. About 5 years ago, Jamie proposed that student athletes should be able to do that in the NCAA legislative cycle. So we're prepared for this, and we actually think this is a great opportunity for our student athletes. Some examples of things that they can do to utilize, some tangible examples, things they can do to utilize their name, image, and likeness or monetize those, is just things like promoting their own business, establishing camps and clinics within their athletic space. Basketball players can do basketball camps, can give lessons. But really relevant to today's topic, they can also use their name, image, and likeness and any kind of reputation that they have, or their brand, if you will, to promote local companies as well in appearances, by making appearances, being in advertisements, as a brand ambassador, as a social media influencer, things like that, by doing autograph signings or other things that might attract attention to local businesses. Hey, here is an important caveat though. ISU student athletes cannot earn name, image, and likeness compensation that is conditioned upon a couple of things. Conditioned upon their attendance at a particular university. So this is really signing on with a student athlete. And so we should talk that through if you get to that place with a student athlete. And it also can't be arranged by coaches. So coaches can't line up NIL deals, and those NIL deals really can't be contingent on, well, if you pass for 400 yards, you're going to get this much. That's kind of a pay for play kind of proxy. So as we think through this, I would ask you all to pause just for a minute and think. I know that what we've seen in this space are a couple kinds of things that fall under this or fall under the description of name, image, and likeness. There are, as we're going to talk about today, legitimate opportunities for student athletes to leverage their visibility and their recognizability to promote products and companies and be compensated for it. But secondly, I think many of you have seen there are a number of instances where institutions are using this space, using this opportunity to create an avenue to compensate student athletes. Really, that's a proxy for pay for play. That we see these huge numerical deals reported. And I want to say a couple things about those. First, many of those deals that we read about in the paper or hear about on Twitter are significantly exaggerated. The only reporters that we have of those deals are student athletes and their agents, and both of them have a vested interest, a significant vested interest in exaggerating the size of many of those deals. But importantly, that is not what we're here talking about today. We're not in that space, and we're not talking about that kind of stuff that often gets lumped into name, image, and likeness. What we're talking about today is a new opportunity that student athletes have to be engaged in local businesses, and importantly, that local businesses now have to use student athletes in a way that may increase the visibility or the recognizability or public perception of your businesses. And that is only if it makes sense to your business. The ask here is not to get involved in any of that monkey business. The ask here is just to think about if student athletes might make sense in a way for promoting your business. I guess here is the part that's part of the ask, is Sean's getting ready. I'm getting ready to turn this over to Sean, is even if you're not sure that any of this kind of thing might make sense to your business, I will tell you that the presence of your business on this platform that Sean's about to describe, just the presence of your business there can help our student athletes. When our student athletes see on this influencer app, on this platform, a breadth of Ames area businesses, it can encourage them and help them to see that our market may not be as small as they would perceive, or as small as maybe others would try to make them perceive. So simply signing up, even if you're not sure that this is going to be a good fit for your business, is actually really helpful to our student athletes as we move forward. So we'd ask you to consider that. And so with that little evangelistic bit, I want to turn it over to Sean, who works at Influencer and has helped us to develop this platform that will help local businesses and student athletes connect with each other in an appropriate way.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the rundown, the introduction there. And thanks everybody else so much for letting us join in here and walk through the actual Cyclone Exchange, the registration process, and talk about how we got here with Influencer in this partnership with Iowa State Athletics. Thanks to the Chamber, thanks to Jamie, thanks to Nick. Again, thanks to Tim for having us here today. Excited to be here with you and speaking and answering many questions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, walk through a quick deck here, outlining Influencer as a company, how we got here, how student athletes at Iowa State are using the platform today, and then also give you a rundown of how to register with the Cyclone Exchange, then also what it looks like for you to navigate, message, transact compliantly with student athletes in the Cyclone Exchange system. So Influencer, as a backstory here, was founded in 2017 as a content delivery system. What we found that back when we first started the company was a lot of student athletes weren't able to access images. They weren't able to access photos themselves from games. And our technology provides artificial intelligence for student athletes to receive images with face recognition and jersey number matching. So Iowa State student athletes are in the system, after games, after practices, downloading their images to build their brand ultimately and build their team and Iowa State athletic brand on social media. Over the past year, as Tim highlighted, name, image, likeness has become a huge topic in collegiate athletics. We then expanded our offering into that piece of collegiate athletics to allow student athletes to self-report disclosures, and then also now discover opportunities all on the same platform that they're already downloading their content in on a daily basis. So they're in the app, downloading content, reporting deals, and then we then also launched the local exchange, which in partnership with Iowa State Athletics, the Cyclone Exchange, allows you all as businesses to register and then message and transact with student athletes and keep everything consolidated in one spot. So furthermore, looking at what is the Cyclone Exchange, this is one platform for you all as local businesses, as fans of the athletics department, to register and request access to the exchange, to then message and transact compliantly with student athletes in one secure platform. Again, the student athletes on the other end will receive messages, they receive proposals from you. They can then accept that information and even receive payment as well to the system. And we'll create one tax 1099 at the end of the year for those student athletes to access to keep everything organized for their personal branding and business. Looking at a couple key value pieces of the local exchange, I already mentioned a couple with the tax information being consolidated at the end of the year. Influencer as a company takes no transaction fees here. There's also no payment on your end as a business when you go through to register. So it's a completely fee-free and free system for you all to use as a business. This also allows you to send out proposals and messages to multiple student athletes at once. And again, they'll receive all this information on their Influencer app that they're already using on a day-to-day basis. So gonna flip over here to the actual live registration page itself. So this is the landing page of the Cyclone Exchange. This is essentially the front porch access for you all as businesses to read more information about the Cyclone Exchange, to review policies, procedures, and information that Tim and the team at Iowa State have added. So if you have questions, this is kind of the first place for you to go to. With those questions, there's some FAQs here, there's some additional links and resources. And there's a brief description of the Cyclone Exchange here as well. So after you review this information, and I know Nick and Tim can send this page out as well, maybe in the chat or also in the future as a follow-up. But once you review that information, you can click request access to then complete your profile information as step number 1. So when you come here, you'll enter in website information for your business, your description, your goals, your objectives in working with Iowa State student athletes for NIL purposes, your business information, and then your contact information lastly there too. All this information is going to be required. This will allow the compliance team at Iowa State to verify your access into the exchange. And then secondly, this will allow student athletes to see this information as they're on their app, as they can go through, look at the businesses there, and have that two-way messaging between you all and the student athletes. And then lastly here, you'll attest to the information, the policies, procedures set forth by Iowa State Athletics, and then submit your submission to the compliance office to then receive an email to create your credentials. So after you submit this information, you'll then get an email confirmation that you've submitted this. And then once you get verified by the compliance office at Iowa State, you'll get a second email with a link to then create your password to access the exchange as well. Alrighty. Flipping over here to the actual page and what this looks like when you are coming in here as a business after you get verified. So after you get that email and you create your password and your credentials, you'll then have a page that looks very similar to what you see here today. Of course, when you get in here, this is a test environment. When you get in here, you'll see all Iowa State student athletes. You'll be able to mass communicate and mass transact with those student athletes here to set up an NIL deal. You can filter by certain sports here in the filter section. So if you want to work with certain sports at Iowa State, you have that capability to narrow your search here. You can filter by personal interests and hobbies. If you specifically want to set up charity events with student athletes, or any information about content creation, social media posts, coaching, you can filter by those aspects that student athletes can enter and change based on their preferences and their account. You can also search for a specific student athlete if you want to find a student athlete you want to work with. And then furthermore, you can view their profile here to look at all the details of their profile card. So once you click view profile, you'll be able to see their bio, where they're from. You'll see kind of their interests, their hobbies outside of their sport, their social media following. And then from their profile card, you as a business can also send a message here to that student athlete and send out a business proposal with our contract builder all here in the system. Additionally, you can select multiple student athletes and then use the blue icon there in the top right corner to send out a message to multiple athletes or bulk propose a transaction here to athletes. Again, they'll receive those messages via the influencer app. They'll also receive these business proposals in the influencer app as well. That student athlete will receive that. Once they accept the deal, that gets reported straight seamlessly to the compliance office at Iowa State. And then from there, that student athlete can fulfill that transaction and you can pay that student athlete out here in the back end as well. All right, so when it looks like for you all to pay student athletes in the system, essentially you navigate to the transaction section of Influencer. You can see a list of all the business proposals that you've sent. You can then see the status when they're accepted. You can go ahead and click that three-dot menu there and send that payment to the student athletes. This can be an ACH direct deposit payment. This can also be a credit card direct deposit as well. You can set up either or payout method on the back end underneath the settings section. But it's very simple to click send payment and then complete that transaction. that student athlete would get that direct deposit straight to their bank account. And then that student athlete also has, at the end of the fiscal year, all their tax information sent to them via Stripe, which is our payment processing partner. If you as a business have an event coming up or some sort of NIL deal that you want to solicit to multiple student athletes, you can also go to the initiatives once you get logged in and create a bulletin board feature. So this is going to be an NIL job posting or bulletin board that student athletes will see in their app. They can raise their hand and apply to this posting. And then you can then select the student athletes you want to work with as well. This is a really exciting feature that we rolled out this summer. We're looking forward to businesses using this feature more going into the new school year, as this is really going to decrease that friction between student athletes discovering opportunities in the platform. But you can select the category, whether it's a collective, whether it's a charity, whether it's a general opportunity, or maybe you're looking for student athletes to work at your firm, at your business, for employment opportunities, for job opportunities. Again, the platform here is two-way messaging and transacting as well. Once you create that bulletin, that student athlete from either all sports or specific sports will see that opportunity and then apply to it straight on their phone as well. And then lastly, here on the computer, you'll see a list of all your conversations you've had with student athletes. It's very simple to hop back into one of those conversations with the athlete to then message them back and forth, negotiate deals, add attachments, see recent transactions you've had with those student athletes as well. Very simple messaging function here in the back end too. And then additionally, you might be asking, if you're on the go, if you're at a game and you want to send a message to a student athlete or traveling, for work purposes, you also have the ability to access the influencer dashboard as a business on your phone. Similar functionality here on the phone. You can use that menu there to message student athletes, to send transactions, etc. This will allow you to scroll through, again, selecting the student athletes, just like we did there on the web, to send a message, to send a proposal to those student athletes. So if you're at a game, this fall, if you're moving around and you want to work with Iowa State student athletes, this will be the most effective way to do so. And it's just going to be at dash.influencer.com on a Safari or web browser on your phone. Flip back over here and throw the link in the chat. Let's see, everyone. Awesome. Well, I just shared the link in the chat. So again, feel free to click the link there, request access if you're interested in working with Iowa State student athletes. If there are any questions in the chat, or if Nick, Tim, or Jamie, if you all have anything else to add, I'd love to hear it.
I think that was really good, Sean. I think it simplifies and shows the chamber members how easy it is for them to be able to reach out to our student athletes. And that's really the purpose behind our doing this today, is to be able to help facilitate connections, because we've been contacted by several of you over the last several weeks. And typically it is, I have an idea, who can I contact? How do I get a hold of XYZ student athlete? And this exchange program allows you to control doing that and makes it just very simplified. And so, as Tim had mentioned, we really encourage you to at least register your business. Even if you today are thinking, I don't think I'd ever do this, we would still encourage you to register, because it helps us with our student athletes to be able to show them the amount of entities or organizations that are in our community that are part of the Ames Chamber and may have an interest at some point in time doing an NIL transaction with them. So we really appreciate your time today, and we hope that you will choose to get involved, and we know you'll have great interactions with our student athletes if you so choose to do that.
Hey, Jamie, I see there's a question in the question pod there about addressing restrictions on using ISU logos and branding as it relates to NIL deals along with student athletes. And it's pretty complicated space right now, but our policy right now does not involve co-branding between using both logos and student athletes. The marks and the student athletes' name, image, and likeness are kind of separate from each other. And for now, those spaces remain mostly separate. There are some caveats to that, but the guiding principle is student athletes monetize their name, image, and likeness, not leveraging on what the institution has invested in the logos and marks. And so those things are generally separate from each other. Maybe Nick can add some a clearer answer than I just gave. I set out to give a clear answer and felt like I didn't now that I'm done.
You did pretty well, Tim. No, in all seriousness, at this time, like Tim said, the policy does not allow that, but a student athlete is obviously tied to Iowa State and his or her program. So they are at least allowed to make reference to the fact that they are an Iowa State student athlete. But the logo usage at this time is something that we are not allowing. And we're in the majority of schools are not at this time, but it's a space that, as Tim indicated, is clearly developing rapidly. And so we'll continue to monitor and adjust accordingly. Great question.
And then a little bit more caveat is, as Nick has said, hey, I'm Carly Spellhog. I'm a softball player at Iowa State University. That's a fact. That's not a trademark activity. She can say that. She can wear her number. We don't own the patents or the IP rights on a particular number or even on a color, but it's just the marks and logos where the distinction's made. So they can identify as a student athlete. They can even wear things that bring in their identification as a student athlete, but the marks and logos are what needs to stay separate.
So there's a follow-up question that says, can the student athlete appear in their uniform? And they can't appear in their actual Iowa State uniform. There are some that have chosen to use the colors and use a uniform that would appear to be the uniform, but not have the actual IP or the mark on it.
And Sean, you may want to take the question from Josh.
Yep, absolutely. So I saw there's another questions about casting a wider net for multiple student athletes in the system. So a couple different ways that you can do that in the Cyclone Exchange is you can select multiple athletes to then message and transact with here. You can also select all athletes here with this checkbox here as well. So that's going to select all athletes in the view. And then from there, you can send out a message to all those athletes that's essentially going to be received as a one-on-one conversation for that student athlete. So it's going to be blind copy. When they respond, it'll then create a conversation between you and that athlete in the conversation section. And then additionally, on a similar note, you can propose a transaction here for all 30 student athletes there. That value will be the same value each student athlete will receive in a payment. And then, with this transaction proposal, you can enter in, all transaction fulfillment details here. You can add attachments, etc. But this is one way that you can cast a wider net and reach multiple student athletes. Or you can also create a bulletin here for an event, I think was mentioned in the question. So it could be an appearance, and then you can put in the description, a URL of the event upcoming, any attachments that you need to include. Typically, it's going to be an offer when there's a payment associated, and then any additional questions for that student athlete. Have you done any other NIL deals? What year are you in school? What sport do you play? What are your interests outside of your sport? And then student athletes will submit their application to you, and then you can go through all the answers when they start to submit and find that one student athlete you want to work with and send them a proposal here in the initiative section.
Sean, can you share with the group just your experience across programs? Because one of the parts of that previous question was, what should we expect to have to pay? And I think just at least putting a context to, because it's not what most people think, because the only thing that makes the USA Today are the outlandish numbers.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great question, that last piece there. And what we found in year one of NIL is really the average, value of transactions is a significantly higher than the median. So the average, I think for us in year one was in the 4-digit range, in 1,000, I think it was around $1,200, but the median was really, I think it was between $50 or $70 for all schools that we support in year one of NIL. So again, to Tim's point earlier, a lot of those deals you see, on Twitter and on the news, those are kind of outliers that definitely bring that average up. But when it comes to, you and the business you own, you can message and work with student athletes even with a lower number for those transactions too. It doesn't have to be a high amount to do an NIL deal for student athletes.
And really, it's this is a brave new world, if you will. And so it'll be interesting to see that in our market with our student athletes. And we certainly won't be a part of that. And I think the market will set itself. We have had some student athletes who have had deals proposed to them that they have chosen not to participate in because they were rather time consuming and maybe not the kind of compensation. But so let's just say our student athletes, I think, are making mature choices about that. And I think that market will kind of set itself where we are.
And I would also say to, the potential businesses that you can always put TBA and see who has interest in doing the event that you've outlined, and then working to negotiate what you think is a fair number versus trying to identify a number on the front end. Because you may have a different number depending on what student athlete you choose to use. The other thing I would also say, given that, we're getting ready to start football, obviously I know many of the potential vendors would you gravitate towards some of the football players or an in-season sport. And you have to be conscious of the fact that they are in the middle of their busiest time. And you may not get a response from somebody at this particular time just because, they're gearing up for, whether you're a volleyball player or a soccer player or a football player, because you're in the middle of their competitive season, where a women's basketball player or a softball player may be more apt to want to do something at this time period and have the time to do it.
I think Jamie makes a great point. As we've had a history. Many of you remember George Yang, very visible and productive Iowa State basketball player, who, when basketball season started, he literally told Twitter fans, "I'll see you in 4 months." And so they are many of them who become very engrossed in what they're doing in school and athletics at that time, and may not respond. And don't take that personally. It may be they're going to close this stuff off for a while while they're in the middle of their competition.
That addressed all the questions that came in through the chat. So again, Emily, thank you for organizing this for the chamber and for those chamber members that have chosen to tune in. We really appreciate it. And we are also available offline. If you have any additional questions, you can reach both Tim or myself or Nick directly by just sending us an email, and our email addresses are available on the cyclones.com website.
And if you know anyone that wasn't able to make it to the webinar today, we are sending this out to all our chamber members. So this was recorded, and so they'll be out in the next couple weeks.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Go Cyclones.
Go Cyclones.